This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The daily tally of new COVID cases in China's Hubei drops to 401. IGAD regional labor ministers endorse a protocol to allow free movement. And Egypt holds a funeral for Hosni Mubarak, the former president who ruled Egypt for nearly 30 years. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Raman Young with a preview of your business news.
That's right, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. South Africa's finance minister cuts the public wage bill despite threats of industrial action. And Kenya's majority state-owned power utility reports a 93% fall in pre-tax earnings. We'll be exploring why those numbers fell in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Right, to begin with the latest on the coronavirus outbreak. In China, the number of new deaths has dropped for 7 consecutive days. Outside the epicenter, Hubei province, new cases fell from 9 on Monday to 5 on Tuesday, and 26 provincial-level regions reported no new infections. The country has recorded over 78,000 confirmed cases in total. More than a third of the patients have now recovered, but more than 2,700 have died. Most of the confirmed cases are in Hubei province. Guangdong, Zhejiang and Henan are the next worst-hit provinces after Hubei, each with more than 1,200 cases. 37 other countries have reported infections with more than 3,000 cases and 53 deaths. Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping says the Chinese epidemic control measures have produced positive results in general, but the situation in Hubei province remains complex and severe. He made the comments in a meeting held by the Political Bureau Standing Committee of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee. He said efforts and the allocation of resources should still be concentrated on Hubei province, adding that people's quality of life should be maintained during the outbreak. She also said special attention should be paid to the elderly, to children and people living with disabilities. He stressed the need for enterprises to resume work and urged local governments to provide them with virus control guidance. She also said that China should work together with other countries and the World Health Organization in the fight against the epidemic. Meanwhile, top Chinese officials, including President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang, have made personal donations to support COVID-19 relief efforts. Now, the number of new cases, as mentioned, has dropped to 0 in many Chinese provinces. But as of Tuesday, 5 prisons in Hubei, Zhejiang and Shandong reported cases of the epidemic. Our reporter Zhao Xiexin has more.
China's Justice Authority at the Wednesday press conference also pointed out details saying that affected women's prison in Wuhan is just about 100 meters away from one pneumonia hospital. Police officers from the prison and patients from the hospital were likely to get on the same bus before the city's shutdown of the public transportation. I also wanted to mention that hours ago on China's Twitter-like social media Weibo, the account verified as Wuhan's government says the first documented patient with COVID-19 symptom in Wuhan denies one's visit to the controversial wildlife market where the coronavirus is thought to have emerged, and some wildlife was reportedly sold illegally there, and the post does not provide further information about if the patient is the first ever infected one. Back in January, local hospitals here were asked to take pneumonia patients' contact history into consideration, meaning even those with the COVID-19 symptom would not be clinically diagnosed as the confirmed cases. And that category, which now has been removed, had worsened the situation for timely treatment for those patients who was diagnosed as novel coronavirus pneumonia with the help of CT scanning, and for some medical workers back then who were not well prepared when treating those infections. Meanwhile, because of the primary assessment over the market addressing the virus source, Chinese legislators swiftly decided to put a halt to consumption of all terrestrial wildlife, including those artificially bred and farmed.
Meanwhile, a fast-developing situation in Europe where nearly 400 cases have now been confirmed. The country with the highest number of confirmed cases outside Asia is Italy. Officials announced the 12th death in the country on Wednesday. France has also reported its second death. Our correspondent Natalie Kane has more.
Currently, the numbers stand as of Tuesday evening. We have 323 confirmed cases across Italy. 5 of those, however, have been announced to be young children as young as the age of 4, as well. The regions of Tuscany and Sicily are also announcing their first cases. The government has been meeting in the capital, Rome, with members of the WHO as well as the European Center for Disease Protection and Control. At the moment, the Minister of Health here in Italy, Roberto Sparzana, is meeting with the EU Commissioner for Health as well as the Director of WHO Europe and the Center for Disease Control. We are expecting the latest from that meeting to come out very, very soon. But there have been a lot of measures across the country that have been implemented. 5 regions under government directives have been told to shut their schools, cancel any public gatherings, as well as churches and even tourist attractions have been closed down during this very sensitive period. Of course, that's a very, very serious topic for the European Union as a whole at the moment, considering the open borders that the Union lives by. At the moment, all ministers have said that to close the borders would be ineffective and disappropriate at this particular moment, but it is certainly a conversation of continued discussion amongst all ministers. We have heard from 5 European countries that 5 European countries have reported cases that have been linked here to Italy. Switzerland as well as Croatia have announced their first cases. There have been some border checks as well that have taken place amongst on board buses, on board trains, and even aircrafts we're hearing coming in and out of the country.
Now, meanwhile, Iraq has closed schools and told its citizens to avoid crowds in an attempt to stop the coronavirus spreading from neighboring Iran. An Iraqi family of 4 has already tested positive after returning from Iran. They are the first Iraqis known to have caught the disease. Iraq is deeply concerned about its exposure to Iran's outbreak, where 19 people have died, and the country's deputy health minister has also tested positive for the virus. Sarbaz Nazari has more from Tehran.
And the deputy was shown on TV sweating, apparently having some fever. The same official has been under fire in recent days for dismissing calls for a quarantine of the city of Qom, where the disease started spreading. He sparked fury by saying that quarantine is a World War era practice and it's outdated. Meanwhile, we had reports that Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, one of the closest officials to the supreme leader, was also hospitalized and tested positive, but people within his circle have denied those reports. Again, in addition, we had Mahmoud Sadeghi, a senior reformist lawmaker, confirming that he has already joined the club, and the spokesman for the health ministry is also believed to be suspected of having caught the virus. At any rate, this has just added to the panic, sending a strong message to the public that how critical the situation could be and how far-reaching the virus is and how close the danger to everyone at this point, something that is not sparing anybody at the moment.
Now, an international COVID-19 workshop is taking place in Tunisia this week. The aim is to strengthen the capacity and preparedness as well as response to the epidemic. Experts and senior officials from health ministries from 19 Mediterranean countries are attending. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi is following that for us in Tunis.
This international workshop is attended by a number of experts and senior officials from health ministries in the Mediterranean basin. It seeks to increase health delegates' knowledge so as to encourage information sharing nationally and regionally and adopt control measures against public health threats.
Tunisia and its partner countries in the Mediterranean are sharing best practices to prevent the spread of COVID-19 to other regions after the outbreak in Italy. The situation is alarming and we must react together to stop this disease.
This program seeks to share knowledge and determine common challenges as part of regional cooperation to detect transborder threats and world threats related to the outbreak of the COVID-19.
We are facing the current epidemic and the resulting health risk at our frontiers, not only within the EU, but also on the borders between the regions like the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, and the emerging countries, because this virus can travel rapidly and we must get ready for any crisis.
Many Arab health executives are currently supervising the epidemiological situation. Specialists were trained in the field of health emergencies and emerging health risks.
COVID-19 cannot be fought independently. It's an international health problem that we can stop by sharing knowledge, information, and avoiding panic.
Experts explained that the new cases of the COVID-19 infections recorded in Italy were the result of a delay in identifying the first cases of people who transmitted the virus. Mediterranean health authorities have called on travelers to abide by the preventive measures imposed at ports, airports and border crossings. Experts assert that it is crucial to increase the level of cross-border alert and to apply the necessary preventive measures to combat the disease. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Now, Ethiopia has expressed satisfaction over the way its students are being taken care of in China. The country said the Chinese efforts in fighting the COVID-19 outbreak are remarkable. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Chinese President Xi Jinping recently exchanged a telephone conversation on COVID-19. Here's more from CGTN's Girum Chala.
After his over-the-phone conversation with President Xi Jinping on Tuesday, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said, and quote, "I have held a fruitful phone conversation with President Xi Jinping on various issues, including efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19. The Prime Minister has also expressed happiness over the special way China is treating the more than 100 students in Wuhan universities. Abiy said he's pleased to learn from President Xi Jinping that China will be providing special care and support to Ethiopian students in the country. Ethiopians on the streets of Addis Ababa also have hailed China's positive efforts.
What we have heard is really encouraging. We have heard the Chinese government is giving our students in China special care and attention. This is really giving their families and friends a huge relief. I would like to appreciate China and our government for the protection and care given to our brothers and sisters.
First of all, what happened in China regarding the outbreak of the coronavirus is very unfortunate. But while China has its own challenges, it's taking care of our students. And that is absolutely amazing. Also, Prime Minister Abiy's effort is also remarkable. This all has given their families, as well as the entire Ethiopian community, huge relief.
I am super excited to hear that China is playing its usual good gesture towards Ethiopia. I would like to acknowledge the Chinese and Ethiopian Prime Ministers' work in this regard. Our leader has the capacity to take the country to the next higher level.
Ethiopia and China have a long-standing bilateral relationship which has successfully surpassed the test of time, and the two nations have the highest level of comprehensive strategic partnership. And today, Ethiopia, through its leadership and most successful global companies like Ethiopian Airlines, is standing by China and its people during this difficult time. As the saying goes, friends indeed are friends in need. Grum Tala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The head of the UN mission in Mali has been visiting the city of Gao. Mohamed Saleh Anadif attended an award ceremony for the 7th batch of Chinese peacekeepers in the North African country. Anadif spoke about China's efforts in fighting COVID-19.
Je voudrais d'abord saluer le peuple chinois, ses dirigeants.
I would first of all like to salute the Chinese people and their leaders for all the efforts they are making to fight this epidemic, to show them the solidarity from all the MINUSMA contingents in Mali. The mobilization, for example, of the army, the mobilization of all the citizens, the chain of solidarity that was created inside China itself, that is something that deserves to be emphasized, to be greeted, to be encouraged, because it's something that, in my opinion, demonstrates a little bit of personality of the Chinese people, the spirit of solidarity, the spirit of hard work, and that is something admirable.
Ministers from the East African regional body IGAD have been endorsing a protocol for visa-free travel between member states. Now, CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from Khartoum in Sudan, where that meeting was taking place.
IGAD says 43% of its citizens are moving within the region without proper documentation. It says movement of people is inevitable, so it wants the protocol on free movement to minimize the irregular migration. IGAD believes free movement of people will promote trade and better living conditions for its citizens.
IGAD are opening a new horizon that can lead the developing and strengthening of all kinds of cooperation between its member states, particularly in light of the regional economic integration and development.
The East African Regional Bloc says the endorsement of the Free Movement Protocol marks the beginning of cooperation in coordinating developmental projects among countries in the Horn of Africa.
This protocol will benefit more than 250 million our citizens. We will have made it easier for them to seek better prospects and create opportunities to grow and prosper anywhere within our region.
IGAD says the protocol will now be tabled before its Council of Ministers for another endorsement. Then it will be taken to heads of state and government to allow for it to become operational. It, however, still needs to educate citizens of member states. It is also requesting more funds from the European Union, German Development Bank, and Swedish government, who have been supporting the development of the protocol.
Thousands of Africans die yearly trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea to go to Europe in search of better opportunities. IGAD says free movement of its citizens in the region could reduce the number of people from the region trying to go to Europe in search of greener pastures. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Khartoum, Sudan.
Let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, Egypt holds a military funeral for Hosni Mubarak. The former president ruled Egypt for nearly 30 years. Swarms of locusts invade northern Uganda after ravaging eastern regions.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has led the funeral service for former President Hosni Mubarak. A military ceremony has been held as Egypt bids farewell to the man who led the country for 3 decades. CGTN's Adel Al-Makhri attended the funeral. Here's that story.
Wrapped in the Egyptian flag, Mubarak dies getting a recognition of a patriot. The Egyptian Armed Forces has granted its former Air Force commander a military funeral. Crowned by the attendance of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Hosni Mubarak may rest in peace, knowing that the state he has led for 3 decades chose to only remember the good side of his legacy.
He was truly a statesman. He sustained burdens. He's a strong president and a fine politician.
His 2 sons, Gamal and Ala, stood tall as their father's old cabinet members and Egypt's current stood in line to pay their respects. Few citizens too were allowed inside Al-Mushir Tantawi Mosque, a worship house built by the military and named after Mubarak's defense minister.
I'm very happy that I attended. It's like a birthday to me. I followed my president during his last steps on earth. I got the opportunity to pray for him and stand next to his sons as if we are one family.
As much as I'm happy for this honorable funeral, I'm equally sad because I'll miss him. He's been like a father to us. He's a president like no other. I pray that he rests in peace.
President Hosni Mubarak served in office from 1981 to 2011, the year Egypt witnessed an uprising that forced him to step down. Since then, he's been facing many trials and his health has been deteriorating. The Arab Republic of Egypt bids farewell to its 3rd president. Mohammed Hosni Mubarak's name has been cleared just days before his death was announced, after Egyptian court has acquitted him from the only corruption case he has been convicted in. Adel Al-Makhri, CGTN, Cairo.
East African countries are looking ahead to future relations with South Sudan's newly formed unity government. There is renewed hope the 2 rivals, President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar, will lay aside their differences. But what will be the impact for neighboring countries, especially Uganda? CGTN's Leon Senyange reports.
An agreement at last, and the end of what has been a tumultuous period. South Sudan again welcomed Riek Machar as the country's first vice president. The rebel leader formally rejoined the South Sudan government in the latest bid to bring peace to a nation ravaged by war.
This latest compromise will preserve the unity of the country and move the people of South Sudan out of this imposed, senseless conflict.
After several months of discussions, the peace deal now is seen as a fruitful effort for some governments. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has been at the center of seeing a deal being achieved between South Sudan's feuding leaders. But with the now realistic prospects of finally achieving peace, the political weight could finally be lifted off Uganda. South Sudan descended into civil war in late 2013. The conflict created one of the fastest growing refugee crises in the world. Uganda bore the brunt, hosting more than 1 million refugees.
Peace for South Sudan is definitely good for Uganda. There are lots of fruits we can reap from a peaceful South Sudan. The issue of market can be so, and it's a country we have always looked at as a partner in our integration process in the East African community.
While Uganda's government could be relieved, skepticism still remains about the longevity of the peace deal. Twice before, Salva Kiir and Riek Machar have fallen out.
If two people are going to come together, the first thing they have to build is trust. They are not coming together because they have will to. It's like now there's a lot of external force because of the humanitarian situation.
South Sudan is expected to hold elections in 3 years' time. It could be another period of judgment.
It should be a situation of reconciliation, dealing with the whatever has possibly gone wrong. Then at a certain stage, when everybody is stable and sane, then elections can be by. But for now, even if it is like 5 years, it may not have proper results.
The new peace deal could be a new dawn for South Sudan, but the world continues to keep its watch. Leon Sanyanga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Now, still in Uganda, a new swarm of locusts has invaded the north after sweeping through regions in the east. CGTN's Isabel Nakira reports from Kitgum in Uganda.
Locusts are racing in the north of Uganda, forming yellowish-brown blankets on tree tops. Farmers in northern Uganda are worried the insects could cause a devastating impact on their crops as they prepare to plant in the next season.
The word is, they are saying these locusts, when they land down, they may lay their egg there. So when they lay egg, within 2 weeks, they will start hatching there, then another locust will come out again.
The migratory insects can live for up to 3 months after laying eggs. And once their eggs hatch, the young locusts can form even bigger swarms. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization warns swarms could more than double if nothing is done fast. The Ugandan army is trying to fight them using motorized spray pumps. The locusts are settling high up in the trees where they can't be reached despite efforts by the military to spray them. And when the wind blows, they are swayed in different locations, further complicating the situation. Locals have now resorted to shouting to scare the insects away.
In our place there, we tried to chase them. Yeah, we burnt fire. Yeah, so they went. Some were telling children to stone them so that they fly to go away.
The FAO says this is the worst outbreak in decades. 7 East Africa countries have been affected by the locust infestation. The Ugandan government says it will begin aerial spraying soon. But the insects are spreading fast, worsening fears of a possible food shortage in the months to come. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kitgum, Uganda.
Indeed, here in East Africa, there are growing concerns that this continuing locust invasion will greatly affect food production. CGTN's Coletta Wanjohi reports from southern Ethiopia, where early rains signaling the start of the planting season have begun, but farmers cannot plant because of the locusts.
As locusts continue to spread across southern Ethiopia, the spraying of insecticide has been scaled up. The Ministry of Agriculture is receiving special assistance from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization to tackle the invasion.
In FAO, we are supporting here the government to conduct this control operation through training, provision of additional aircraft and pesticide. We must control here because if we do not manage to control the crops here, the food security of the population will be affected in the next harvest.
The southern region, one of Ethiopia's main agricultural hubs, has become a breeding ground for the locusts. Newly arrived swarms have laid eggs that are already hatching. Locals say they need more help to stop the spreading.
We try to establish the ground team to control these newly emerged or hatched hoppers from this area. So now we are ready to do that one, but still we need some additional support from the government and other non-governmental organizations like equipment, sprayer equipment, vehicles, mounted sprayers, vehicles, motorbikes, and also some budget.
Swarm movements between Kenya and Ethiopia continue to worsen the situation. Pilots spraying pesticides say they face a number of obstacles.
Some of the areas are very interior. They're very far and very deep. So getting that information to the so that action can be taken becomes a challenge. Probably the other thing is you'll find that some of the sites are within people, and despite the chemical being safe, we never spray on people. We don't spray on animals. So if the swarm is in an area that has people or that has animal, an area that is inhabited, then again we cannot spray in such an area.
The problem is a regional one. The locusts were first reported in Somalia last year before spreading to Ethiopia. The swarms have since moved to Kenya, Uganda and South Sudan. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization has made an appeal for $135 million to help the East African countries affected by locust invasion. $50 million of this would go to Ethiopia. The organization says the affected countries were ill-prepared for the attacks. Response teams will now have to move more quickly to avoid more damage being done. Coletta Njohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Your business news up next with Raman Yang.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. South Africa's finance minister aims to cut the public wage bill despite threats of industrial action. And Kenya's power utility reports a 93% decline in pre-tax earnings. We'll explore why next. Let's start in South Africa, where the highly anticipated 2020 budget statement has finally been delivered. Now, some have described it as one that may please investors and ratings agencies, but it will certainly set the stage for an interesting showdown with labour unions in the country. The Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, has proposed cutting the public wage bill by over $10 billion over the next 3 years, but unions are vehemently opposed to any changes to their current wage agreement, which ends in 2021. The minister also argued that a sharp slowdown in economic growth and high demands for support from state-owned entities, like Eskom, for example, could result in the country's highest budget deficit in 28 years. Now, the deficit as a percentage of GDP is forecast to expand to 6.8% in the fiscal year that ends in February 2021. Treasury also forecast economic growth this year of just 0.9% compared to a prior forecast of 1.2%. On to East Africa now, where the majority state-owned power distributor Kenya Power says that its pre-tax profits for the year ending in June 2019 fell by 93% to just $3.3 million. Now, the company's management attributed that decline in part to the higher cost of buying electricity. Electricity purchase costs, they say, jumped by around $180 million, and that offset an increase in sales to consumers, both retail and industrial. Finance costs also went up due to higher short-term borrowing. Now, the company delayed the publication of its financial results last November due to a vacancy in the post of Auditor General. That office is responsible for auditing state-controlled firms in the East African state. Now, into North Africa, Egypt plans to launch a bidding round for exploration for gold and other minerals from the middle of March this year. Investors will be bidding on blocks which will be awarded to them within 4 months of the bid round being launched. Now, in January, the North African country issued new regulations that appeared to eliminate the need for mining companies to form joint ventures, as it were, with the government. The same changes also limit state royalties to a maximum of 20%. The country's eastern desert is believed to be highly mineral-rich, as it forms part of an area known as the Arabian-Nubian Shield. That's a geological feature that stretches from Saudi Arabia and Yemen in the east to Sudan and Egypt over in the west. And we're still in North Africa, where the Emir of Qatar has concluded a 2-day visit to Tunisia. The Gulf state, as you might recall, has provided billions of dollars in support for Tunisia, especially in the aftermath of the Arab Spring, which started in 2011.
Tunisia's President Qais Said welcomed Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani in Carthage. The head of state shed light on Qatar's financial support to Tunisia since 2011 and the possibility of converting debts into investments.
I appreciate the readiness of Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani to contribute to the implementation of the Medical City project in Karwan Governorate, as well as the Production Markets project in the Governorate of Sidi Bouzid, that will facilitate collecting, packaging and processing of all agricultural products.
The Emir of Qatar described the Tunisian-Qatari relations as exemplary and urged closer cooperation.
The meeting dealt with bilateral relations in the areas of investment, security and defense. We are keen to develop the distinguished relations between Qatar and Tunisia in all fields.
The high-level meeting also focused on the alarming situation in Libya. Qais Said said Tunisia is one of the most affected countries by the unrest in the North African state.
We discussed the need to find an inter-Libyan solution and the possibility of inviting Libyan tribes to hold a second expanded meeting in Tunisia where all tribes will be represented to end the fighting, wars and divisions.
The Palestinian cause was also on the agenda of the meeting. The two Arab leaders emphasized the need to respect international legitimacy and hold on to Al-Quds as the capital of Palestine. The Tunisian head of state and the Emir of Qatar stressed their identical views on many internal, bilateral, regional and Arab issues. Analysts say the two-day visit will boost economic ties while developing and enriching cooperation between Tunis and Doha. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Away from the continent, the United Kingdom and the European Union are expected to start formal negotiations on a trade deal in March. But doubts still remain on whether these talks can actually deliver a deal that's palatable to both sides by the end of the year. CGTN's Andrew Wilson reports.
The day is getting closer and the noises from Brussels are getting louder. The tight timetable was Boris Johnson's idea, so minds at Downing Street are focused. But the EU negotiators have been quicker off the mark, laying out their position after an all-member states meeting early in the day. Led by the French, there is a determination that UK privileges in any future market will be dependent on full alignment, a level playing field in areas such as subsidies, environmental protection, food standards and employment laws.
We represent the interests of our citizens, the interests of the economy, the interests of the employees, and therefore there cannot be a free trade agreement which doesn't protect the interests of our employees. There must not be social dumping, there must not be environmental dumping, and this must be made clear to our British counterparts.
Not quite what the UK government has in mind, but something that British businesses will probably be keen on. Downing Street has its own red line. Boris Johnson is sticking to the stated Brexit goal of restoring economic and political independence by the end of the year. Taking back control remains the policy mantra. Many will see that as prioritising UK sovereignty issues over the needs of Britain's business interests. The UK will field again the examples of Canada and Japan as trading partners that enjoy pick-and-choose arrangements with agreed tariff deals. But the message from Brussels is clear. Any drop in UK standards to accommodate other trading partners, such as the United States, will cost Britain dearly within the EU market. The talks begin in March.
All right, then, one last story for you in this segment. The Monetary Authority of Singapore plans to issue up to 5 digital banking licenses by the middle of the year. Now, that essentially would mean that Singapore would be home to one of the major digital banks in the region, as CGTN's Miralu now explains.
Singapore is liberalizing and digitalizing its traditional banking sector, opening its financial industry to digital lenders in a move that could send shockwaves throughout Southeast Asia. Contenders range from Alibaba's Ant Financial, as it continues its efforts to expand outside China, to a partnership between Southeast Asia's ride-hailing giant Grab and Singapore's biggest telecom provider Singtel. In total, there are 21 applications for digital banking licenses, comprising of 7 for the digital full bank licenses and 14 for the digital wholesale bank licenses. Successful applicants will be announced by the Monetary Authority of Singapore in June, with operations slated to start in 2021. The Singapore Business Federation is a minority partner in the Beyond Consortium, which has applied for a full digital bank license.
We have 27,000 members. Most of them are SMEs, and we know from our regular surveys of our members that though in Singapore we are very much well banked, some of our SME members do have financing difficulties. With the US-China conflict, the situation has gotten a little worse. More of the companies, particularly in construction, retail, are facing cash crunch because of the trade conflict.
Zenon Capron, founder of Capron Asia, a financial technology research and consulting firm, believes that a differentiated value proposition is important for new digital banks entering the market.
It's really going to be that focus on niche areas of the market that are underserved by the traditional financial industry that will be the marker of success for any of the entrants into the digital banking space. I think what's really interesting is some of the platforms like the Grab, Singtel, and Ant Financial that are coming with platform plays that are much more than just financial services, but have other products and services that they're bringing to market as well.
What's more exciting for the players is that outside the financial hub of Singapore, underbanked or unbanked consumers in other developing Southeast Asian economies offer attractive opportunities.
Once Indonesia moves forward with digital banks, or indeed as some of the Singaporean or Hong Kong digital banks expand their footprint, I think that's really where we'll see a lot of impact, and that's really where the opportunity is. China is a great example. I mean, with Ant Financial's My Bank and Tencent's WeBank, we've seen them bring hundreds of millions of individuals and companies into the economic fold.
Market observers also noted that the new coronavirus epidemic might push more consumers towards digital banking in Singapore. Yet the country is already well positioned as a fintech center with favorable infrastructure, regulations, and talent, which could help local digital banks succeed domestically and possibly springboard from the little red dot into the blue ocean of Southeast Asia. Miru Lu, CGTN, Singapore.
I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll be looking at the 2020 budget coming out of South Africa. Who won, who lost, what tax policy changes rather are also in the pipeline, and can Tito Mboweni really get a handle on expenditure? All that and more is coming your way live at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, let's take a short break, but here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, we look at how a German initiative is giving South Africa's up-and-coming musicians a global platform. Emerging artists in South Africa are receiving guidance on the global music industry. German initiative Paradise Sound System is helping a group of musicians produce world-class content. It will give up-and-coming artists guidance and access to a global distribution chain. CG10's Julie Shire has that story.
More than 120 South African artists made submissions to the German African initiative Paradise Sound System. But just 10 of the hottest new acts made the cut for an exclusive recording to be distributed internationally.
Those 10 artists got a chance to be in studio at Jazzworks. Jazzworks is renowned for their amazing audio quality and recordings. And they got a live performance video. They're going to get an audio that is mastered, a live audio of their recording, an EPK, images to assist them with their promotion, and we're going to be distributing or assisting them with their distribution, holding their hand from a global perspective with the Berlin office.
This platform represents an exciting new gateway for South African artists across all genres to showcase their talent on a global scale.
Well, there's so much talent in South Africa, and we always had the feeling that the stuff doesn't get out from South Africa, and it's a bit of bubble here, and we would like to get rid of this bubble and would like to make it visible on the planet. And we have the structure, so we thought, okay, let's close this gap or build a bridge.
A handful of South African artists have made it big on the global charts, but it's still tough for budding musicians to break into the industry.
As independent artists, we come across a lot of challenges, and we're not exposed in the manner that we'd like to because of those challenges. So with the platform and with the muscle that Paradise Sound System is offering, we are able to get exposed, learn, not just on a local platform, but globally. So it's really important for us in our experience.
I've tried marketing myself, and I've been, getting followers, people approaching me, wanting to work with me. So I believe you can do it on your own. thing is, it's going to take time compared to getting signed.
Fortunately, I have been on this global journey now for about 4 years, and this platform is so important and so great for us, those that do work for themselves, to a point where it opens up so many doors of opportunity. You get to network with people, you get to sell yourself to the global stage, you know.
This is the first time an initiative of this magnitude was held in South Africa. And it's just a matter of time before we see more artists such as DJ Black Coffee and rapper Sho Majozi taking the world by storm. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's take a short break. Your sports news up next. Coming up, South Africa's Stefanian Ottery Football Club sets kids up to play in the Manchester Cup.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
We start your sports news in South Africa. Children from one of Cape Town's most marginalised communities are set to compete in a tournament in Manchester in the UK. They're from the Stefanian Ottery Football Club that nurtured, among others, former Manchester United midfielder Quinton Fortune. CGTN's Travis Andrews brings us the story.
They are the cream of the crop, a skilled squad with an abundance of depth, and the very best that the Stefanian Ottery Football Club has to offer. All this, and most of them are just under 12 years old. Now the opportunity has come knocking, and these lot are heading to compete in the Manchester Cup, alongside a host of other international teams. While the preparations have been tough, the stakes are certainly high, as this could launch the platform for their international careers.
These boys had been identified from under 10 already, so they've been playing together for the last 3-4 years as an example. And we felt that this is an opportunity to really sort of take a strong group of under 12 boys who have really sort of shown commitment, who are talented, who have the opportunity to really be scouted potentially at this world sort of renowned tournament.
And it takes talent to challenge for top honours, and talent they have. Deft ball skills such as this takes time, practice and dedication. For many of these boys, soccer has been an escape vehicle from the difficulties found in marginalized communities.
We believe that there's an opportunity for these boys to really make a difference in their communities. It's really about not allowing them to become a statistic. We've seen so many talented boys from the Cape Flats just go back into their communities and really succumb to the elements that and the social ills that are all part and parcel of that.
The road to Manchester has also not been easy, as some kids are without the funds needed to even book their flights, but they're still holding out hope and they've been continuing with their training. For many of these kids, playing overseas is certainly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that could alter the course of their lives in a positive way.
I'm very excited for the trip because it's a big chance to get scouted and go play in teams overseas and then become professional. Yeah.
It has been a lifelong dream for me. I really want to